If you are a psychic, an intuitive, an empath, a magical being, and you've dealt with ever being persecuted in your life, in this episode, we're going to dive into the origins of the shadow of persecution, how it relates to the witch wound, and how it relates to the clearing of your throat chakra, your expression, and stepping into your power as a leader of the new earth. Now, first off, a potent example in history of why people are so threatened by the intuition is the word witch. Now, the word witch means wise, and the wise, witchy wise way is actually the divine feminine aspect of our being, of which we all have. Now, some women who are into divine feminine embodiment may embody this essence in a different way than, say, men do who are on a path of, say, embodying their masculine more, but we both have these polarities within ourselves. So this isn't about gender. This is about the aspect of the divine feminine that is non-logical, it's not rational, and it's non-linear. And it's also rooted deeply within ways of indigenous wisdom. So where do you see this type of persecution most in our history? Well, you see it in, say, the relationship with the First Nations people. You see it in relationship to, say, conquistadors, or, those bringing in the Christian ways that were, in a way, that were repressing people. Say in the witch burning times, there's overlaps, right? Between that of coming in with saying that Christianity is the right way, right? And this is the way that you should believe, everybody should believe. And if you don't, we're going to kill you. Because that's really embodied the teachings of Jesus, right? Which was, I believe it was judge thy neighbor. Oh, wait, I think he taught unconditional love for everyone. You know why? Because Jesus was a witch. Telling you that you could have a direct connection to God, to love thy neighbor, that we are all one, who represented the first wave of us awakening on this planet with Christ consciousness. What was he persecuted for? He was persecuted because he was a threat to the paradigm system of control within his time. What does that sound very familiar to? Somebody saying things that aren't within the logical mind of the time. Somebody who's beyond their time. Somebody who's speaking of direct connection to the divine. Sounds a lot like the same persecution that called Christians used to persecute witches later on, most of which were medicine people that worked with the land and actually were bridges for their tribe, were people who could talk to the spirits, people with intuitive gifts and abilities that were threatening to the patriarchal structure of their time. So I just find that really interesting, that people say that they follow Christ, and yet they judge others, They persecute others in the name of their religion, which was the same thing that happened to their Savior, who taught them to love others unconditionally. Now, isn't that hypocrisy? Now, here's another level of it, right? Is that you're very threatening. When you start stepping into your power, you're very threatening to other people because they start to feel like they can't control you, that you're not fitting within the matrix. So they'll turn into an agent smith. And I actually just had someone comment, I just was on a video the other day telling me to go see a psych doctor. And I thought that was really funny. And I said, checking my pockets. All out of fucks. Because you know how much I've dealt with that in my life? I'm going to be myself, and I'm not going to let that experience affirm the wound of persecution. So it's like the sting of that experience and stepping into your power and be like, you know what? No, like I'm done. You know, a huge part of my awakening was realizing the programming of the psychiatric industry. That's right, I said industry, with the pharmaceutical industry that are in bed together that help write the diagnostic manual for people's disorders. And I was given a disorder called ADHD when I was, 7 years old or 8 years old or something like that, and put on Ritalin for 10 years until I took myself off of it, learning I started seeking for natural ways to heal this, right? And I found meditation, and I also found herbal medicine through that experience. And right before this, I was severely struggling with depression. I was having trouble focusing on my goals, and I had grown up my whole life people doing exactly what that person did in that comment, telling you there's something wrong with you, right? And there's not. There's actually, you're actually gifted, but you are triggering to people because you exist outside of what's normal for them, which is good. I'm glad they're triggered, because that way they can get that uncomfortable feeling, which will cause them to evolve. And so when I went through that experience, you can say I'm a little edgy about this today. Like, how fun is it for you to actually be somebody who's a very good-hearted being who can see into the spiritual dimension and spend a life of people not taking you seriously, calling you crazy, and dealing with all of that. Meanwhile, for you to actually be here with these gifts that are outside of the norm of the paradigm that people can understand, and for you to be patient, for you to be compassionate, for you to learn how to have boundaries with that, for you to learn how to be in your power with that, right? I bet you a lot of people thought Einstein was crazy too. Do you want to be a part of the village of people running with their pitchforks towards the witches? Or do you want to be somebody who thinks for themselves? I just think it's interesting that people in the name of righteousness persecuted people who were witches under the same practice of which persecuted their savior. Very interesting. Because the reason that is that people have a disease of self-righteousness that causes them to be very limited in their thinking, and then causes them to demonize things that they don't understand, to label those things as wrong, or to label those things as crazy, all right? And the psychiatric and the pharmaceutical industry are in bed, right? Because a huge wave of starseeds were born. And this was interesting. It was right around the time that this whole ADHD thing came out, right? So when I learned meditation, I started working with these herbs like rhodiola, I think echinacea, a couple other ones. I started being able to really shift my focus and being able to master my focus, and realizing this moment, I realized there was nothing wrong with me. But the society itself is programming you that there's something wrong with you, because it's trying to help you to fit a certain mold of what is appropriate to be. And this is a hyper-logical, hyper-masculine perspective of society that is deeply sick and out of balance. And so certain souls incarnate to clear through these, and these could be past lives, these could be things you went through, right? So you're clearing these karmas, and then in this lifetime, you don't experience the same thing. What you experience is that through transmuting that, you step into your power as a leader of the light, as a leader of your own spiritual connection, right? To being able to be a conduit for your truth to come through, so that you can speak messages from the unseen realms, so that you can help be a guide for the shift in consciousness. People don't all have the same role, but I'm just giving a couple examples of, like, if you make art, if you bring the unseen into the seen, if you are on the leading edge, if you have spiritual gifts, if you are an intuitive person and you've experienced these things in the past, it's also because you being in your power is very threatening to the matrix. And so this will come up in these waves as you clear these own patterns inside of yourself. and you learn to not give a fuck, and you step into your power anyways, and you heal that, whatever you share with that, there's nothing that can stop you. It can't stop you anymore from stepping into expressing your truth. It didn't stop me from making this video. In fact, it inspired me to make this video because I think it's really funny that people still think like that. I think it's really funny. And I think that honestly, the people that are energy sensitive, that are heart centered, that are intuitive, that have been communing with the spiritual realms, and yes, maybe we don't fit the package of how you think we should be or look or whatever, it doesn't matter. Like, everybody is perfectly in the form that they're meant to, and you're going to trigger things in people, right? This is something that I'm getting past, is that you want to be Mr. Nice Guy. You don't want to trigger anybody, right? But people need to be triggered in certain ways. Not like, oh, you triggered me and you have to correct yourself. No, like actually by being yourself, it's going to like trigger awakening in other people, right? And that's actually a really important thing, because then the people that don't resonate with you will be repelled from you, and the people that do will be attracted to you. And it's not by being somebody else that you're not, it's by being who you really are. And yeah, I just thought it was really funny that the same dynamics that, say, Jesus Christ went through as an avatar of Christ consciousness, of that type of consciousness, you know, that realized consciousness as an embodiment of that in the story of life, that he went through being persecuted by, what, the Romans? Oh, interesting. Roman Catholics were a vessel for the Roman Empire to usurp the ideas of Christianity and turn them into a control system that caused people to judge themselves using these terms like sin, causing them to see themselves as less than worthy, less than God, and actually have a lot of distorted teachings. You know how many times the Bible's been rewritten? That cause then other people to judge other people and saying they're not going to go to the right place if they don't believe what they believe. None of which is anything about what Christ taught. So the teaching is taken and then it's perverted in order to control, right? And then the same people that are then indoctrinated into this system are the ones that go out and persecuted the witches, right? Who represented the divine feminine. They represented the masculine imbalance of that time. Now we're living in a spirit of a different age where these things are coming into balance, right? And the clearing of those things is happening. But then those same dynamics play out in the modern day matrix with a lot of what people grew up with, that also play out in using the institutions. I'm not giving advice here, by the way. This is a disclaimer, right? Seek your own right path. But basically, what I'm saying here is that people are being manipulated by these mass institutions and corporations in the same way that it played out in history. And that the same pattern that was playing out then is playing out now on a lesser level. And that as people are able to free themselves from the shackles of the mind, as people are no longer able to be repressed, they realize that it's an internal reflection of their own shadow, and as they do the shadow work, they're able to free and liberate that from their own part of what they share with the collective consciousness. It is expanding, and then what happens now in this age is that you see people stepping up and being powerful as psychics, as intuitives, as spiritual awakening guides, as speakers, as authors of people speaking about light and consciousness and truth, right? And that there's people that do that become very expanded in their reach because we're living in a different spirit of the age. And so now there's more support for this energy to come forward. And so if you are someone who's been gifted that has never fit in, just know that the poison, the sting of that experience, sometimes they say a little bit of poison goes into an antidote, is actually what will help you to liberate your expression, because repressing your own expression is just playing out the distortion of that old age that kept you from being able to speak your truth, because whenever you did, you were shut down, or you were maimed, or you were killed, right? And this is something that I think, when people look into the Akashic records or past lives, that a lot of people have experienced, especially in regressions. And so as you're able to clear this through the experience of, say, for me, sharing my voice on YouTube and having people call me crazy, having people be negative towards me, having me be triggered by me, and me over the years continuing to do it anyways, was the medicine that I needed to stop caring what other people thought of me and to liberate myself to do it anyways. Because not everybody's gonna like you or like what you have to say. But if you let that stop you, the people that really do need you will never get a chance to hear you.